Welcome back, everybody, here to 32 on 32 here on Chase's Sports News, where we preview every NFL team season with a team reporter. This year, the Baltimore Ravens are in a really interesting position because they're always one of the NFL's best teams. But can they finally get over the hump? Welcome back here, everybody, to Chase's Sports News today to answer all of those questions. I am joined by a Ravens kind of host and analyst on the radio, 105.7 The Fan, Cordell Woodland. Cordell, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So happy to have you here. Links to all of Cordell's work is in the description because he's been doing all of these post-training camp updates. And so we appreciate all the updates, Cordell, giving us all the recent Baltimore Ravens news. Overall, what else has mainly stood out to you from Baltimore Ravens training camp?
Yeah, I mean, these injuries starting to pile up here over the last couple of weeks have been a little concerning. I also think this defense looks like they're going to be legit this year. Last year, they got off to such a slow start. They were one of the league's worst defenses, especially in the pass game. And I don't anticipate that necessarily being an issue for them this year. I think their defense, look, I don't know if I'm ready to say that their defense will be their best unit. But it could be. They've got just as many stars on that defense as the offense does. So it could definitely be that way. And that's the way that some of these defensive stars want it. Marlon Humphrey talked about it, I think, at minicamp, how he wants the Ravens to be known as a defensive team again. And the defense that I've watched to this point in training camp, they look like they could be one of the league's best.
Yeah, I mean, iron sharpens iron in a sense when you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on offense, and then all the talents you have defensively, Nnamdi Madubuike, obviously Marlon Humphrey, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton. How is he fourth on that list? Jair Alexander, you add. So you're right, a lot of defensive talent as well, and we'll see if maybe both can, play well at the same time, because you're right, the Ravens defense did start off slow last year. Kind of the team did as a whole. They were 0-2, almost 0-3 after that near collapse against the Cowboys, but they turned things around. You go 12-5, you win the AFC North. A lot of fans are maybe anticipating Lombardi, and then once again they fall short on the road in Buffalo where they lose the turnover battle 3-0. How come last year wasn't the year that the Ravens got over the hump?
I mean, I think you said it. Just right there, that game in Buffalo, that seems to be the Ravens you see, this version of the Ravens that you see in the postseason more times than not. And it's the turnover battle. They turn the ball over, which is weird. Obviously Lamar has an MVP-esque type of year, 41 pass touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. That they did not really struggle with turnovers for most of last season. So as usual, it kind of shows up in the playoffs, and the way the playoffs work, one turnover could be the nail in the coffin. You're going up against the best teams in the league in January, especially in the divisional round. So you don't want to turn the ball over at all, and then you combine that with their defense really not turning the ball over as much last year, and that's been a huge point of emphasis for them this year, is trying to get more turnovers. But yeah, I think it's just, the Ravens just haven't been able to look like the Ravens when they have to be. And that's in the playoffs. And until they do, the result will continue to be the result.
Yeah, a lot of people love to bring up, Lamar Jackson's falters. Yes, 2 turnovers in that postseason game. They like to bring up the offense as a whole. And the reason why the Lions did limit some of Buffalo's scoring when they're not getting the ball on the opposite side of the field. But I saw a stat recently, and Lamar Jackson's defense for him is only forced 1 turnover. He's never started a drive in opposing territory in the postseason. Those are breaks that the Josh Allens, the Joe Burrows, the Jalen Hurtses, the Patrick Mahomes of the world, they get come postseason time. So, yes, while Lamar Jackson has not played at the highest level, the defense also needs to force some turnovers for him. Last season, we saw 2 historic seasons from Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. We'd like to watch them together last year, dominating in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of video game-ish. You don't expect to ever get a backfield that has a Lamar Jackson and a Derrick Henry in it. That just doesn't really sound fair at all. And it wasn't. The defenses couldn't stop them on the ground. Lamar ends up being one of the more efficient quarterbacks that this game has seen. He had the 4th highest passer rating in NFL history last year. I mean, he looked like prime Aaron Rodgers last year as a passer. And, I think you combine Derrick Henry with a Ravens offense that historically has always been able to run the football. That's just what they do. They've had number one rushing offenses without Pro Bowl running backs back there, and Lamar's been back there as well. Lamar's definitely the straw that stirs the drink for the Ravens run game. And Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. And everybody's waiting for him to fall off a cliff that doesn't seem to show up. I wouldn't
Right.
anticipate Derrick Henry falling off a cliff this year either. I mean, I think this offense is only going to be, I don't know if better is the word, but I think they'll be just as good. I don't, I can't sit here and say that Lamar is going to duplicate the efficiency that he had last year, but Lamar at his best is always one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the league. So he'll be in that world. But yeah, he and Derrick Henry together last year, I don't know what the league could do to stop those guys if they're both healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable, particularly once the offensive line started to become more cohesive during the year and we saw Derrick Henry have those breakout rushing games. First 2 weeks, it was tough because the rushing threat from Henry wasn't there with the offensive line. But once the offensive line was cohesive and together, yeah, I mean, they were so difficult to stop. And it almost became a battle of like Derrick Henry, who you can make an argument is a top 10 player in the NFL, was the second player you're game planning for every week. And that's not even bringing up the other weapons on this offense as well. Look, I mean, we can bring him up. We can continue to talk about him because he's that great. Lamar Jackson, I mean, you said it, he had one of the best quarterback seasons of all time last year when you just look at individual prowess. He did those 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 4,000 passing yards, 900 on the ground. He just did it all. But it felt like there was the next evolution of Lamar Jackson that we hadn't seen before when you combine the passing success and the rushing success. What was different about last year's version of Lamar Jackson than the previous versions of Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I think Lamar took a lot. First of all, I think last year was the most his supporting cast, you know, consistently showed up for him in his career. I mean, Rashad Bateman, career year for him. Zay Flowers in his second year only got better, had 1,000-yard receiving season. Isaiah Likely turned out to be one of Lamar's favorite targets as in the scramble drill, and how many jump balls that Isaiah Likely went for him in the back of the end zone. Mark Andrews ends up leading the league in touchdown receptions for a tight end. He had 10 red zone touchdowns last year, Mark Andrews. We just talked about Derrick Henry having another great year. Second in the league in rushing, I think, last year. Justice Hill had a great year last year as a third down back. How many third and longs did Justice Hill take on a screen pass or a draw or a dump off pass and just made the most of it? Lamar's weapons around him all balled out last year. They all balled out. And then it makes Lamar's job easier. So you
Right.
get to make this guy, who is arguably the best individual player in the league, now you make his job that much more easier. Oh yeah, defenses aren't going to stand a chance. So I think that's how you end up with him having one of the best statistical years that a quarterback has had in the NFL.
It was unbelievable, and it's great that you mentioned that because, like, I don't think the 2023 version of Lamar and the 2024 version of Lamar were that different. I mean, obviously, you had the threat of Derrick Henry, but I mean, sure, you could say Lamar Jackson made strides for sure, but I just think overall, you wonder why he had a career passing season. To me, I think another key element to it was Ronnie Stanley was finally healthy. And
Mm-hmm.
we had not seen that since 2019, where he had a fully healthy season, where it just felt like he was back to his normal way. 2023, kind of, sort of, but still was kind of getting back in the rhythm. 2019 and 2024 have probably been Lamar Jackson's two best seasons at the pro level. It's come when Ronnie Stanley has been healthy.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And that's a good point that you make about Ronnie's, arguably his two best seasons being last year and 19 when he was an all pro. And so, and Lamar ends up having two of his best years in those same years. And that's what gives me confidence that Lamar could do it again this year, because Ronnie has looked like a mountain in practice this year. He's practiced every single day. He hasn't had any of these nagging injuries. He's been healthy the entire time.
Yep.
And when Ronnie's out there and at his best, the proof is in the pudding. Lamar is able to do his thing as well. So yeah, definitely a good point. Just the offensive line as a whole, another year for them, where, like you said, last year, especially at the beginning, they start off very rocky. They're still trying to figure out their guard situation. Roger Rosengarten is slowly being put out there as a right tackle, but he's not fully the starting right tackle yet. And eventually they do figure it out with the offensive line after Voorhees gets hurt. And they take off, and Henry takes off with them. And another year with this offensive line, I think Voorhees has had a strong camp. I think Lele has taken, a couple of strides. I still don't. I just think he's an average to even below average to sometimes slightly above average guard, and that's good enough on this offensive line
Right.
with the weapons that they have. So I think all that combined, we could see this Ravens offense be elite again.
Really quick before we touch on something else, how has Roger Rosengarten looked to you? Because he's kind of, I feel like, the other key component at right tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been solid. He has gotten to start these first two preseason games. So he's gotten some game reps under his belt this year. He hasn't had the camp that Ronnie Stanley has had. I think he's had a better. I think he and Voorhees have had a similar type of camp. Voorhees has been really consistent. I think for the most part, Rosengarten has been consistent as well. So I think it'll be another good year for him. I would anticipate so, as long as health allows. But I have no reason to think Roger Rosengarten wouldn't be able to kind of build off of what he was able to do last year.
Talking about building off what you were able to do last year, I think that's what the Ravens defense is going to look for in year 2 under Zach Orr. Last year, there are a few other elements that we could break down. I kind of want to hear your thoughts. First half of the year, the defense is one of the worst in the league, as you mentioned. Second half, they're one of the more cohesive and efficient in the league. What adjustments were made kind of halfway through that allowed the Ravens to dominate defensively in the back half of the year?
Yeah, I mean, they made some personnel changes. They take Marcus Williams out of safety and inserts Ardarius Washington. They also end up adding, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, but they added a veteran defensive coach to help out their secondary last year and help stabilize things back there. And it's gonna drive me crazy. So Dean Pease, exactly. Dean Pease was brought on. Dean Pease helping to stabilize things back there. Zach Orr being a rookie defensive coordinator, first time calling plays. You bring in a familiar face here in Baltimore, a guy that's been around the league for a while to help be a different voice. I think and that helped. More personnel changes on the defensive side of the ball. Trenton Simpson goes out. You end up getting a couple of special teams guys to help fill that role at linebacker. And I think Roquan's play leveled up. Kyle Hamilton's play leveled up as they got better. But I think they struggled with communication at the start of the year. That was their big issue. And Marcus Williams he acted like he forgot how to play football. I don't understand it. That's still one of the biggest mysteries to me. And that's a guy that's still on the streets without a job right now. Marcus Williams is should be in the prime of his career right now. I don't understand what happened with him. He was a really good player, and he struggled with some injuries in Baltimore. But when he was on the field his first year or two, he was really good. I don't understand what happened with him last year, but taking him out and putting Ardarius in ended up being a huge boost for that defense.
Oh, absolutely. And I think also moving Hamilton back to safety, he was playing a lot inside, down low with Roquan Smith. So kind of bringing him back to his normal positioning, and we saw him dominate as well. I've been continuing to say this. I feel like there are a lot of parallels between Zach Orr now going into year 2 as defensive coordinator and Mike when he was going into year 2. Year 1 for McDonald, like Orr, you start off slow, then you get things going, and you're a great defense in the back half of the year. Then in year 2 for McDonald is where we saw him be in those head coaching conversations after Baltimore's defense was one of the best in the NFL. Could we see Orr, you think, take that year 2 jump and see Baltimore's defense on that elite stature like they were in 2023?
I mean, they've got the talent to. I think on paper they're more talented than they were that year. I mean, you look at this DB group compared to that DB group, it's a much better one. You know, Brandon Stevens had a good year that year, but I think I'll take Nate Wiggins over Brandon Stevens right now. You have Jair Alexander as opposed to Arthur Millette. I think I would take Jair Alexander at his best over Arthur Millette. And Arthur Millette was really good for the Ravens. I don't want to discount
Yeah.
him at all. But they just Malachi Starks at safety, like I think you have some guys now that you feel like talent wise, the Ravens stack up against anybody. Whereas that year they were very talented too, and the scheme boosted them even more. Maybe that'll be the case this year, but I think if this defense can get to those turnovers the way that they have talked about and the way that they have shown in camp, without a doubt, I think they could be elite. Especially, I haven't even brought up Mike Green, who's a guy
Right.
that changes a lot of dynamics for them in passing down situations.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll have to obviously see the inside linebacker next to Roquan Smith. That's going to be the major question for this Baltimore team, kind of the looming question as the Ravens try to figure out who's going to be on their 53-man roster. I just had a TikTok video with Samuel Njoku, a Ravens Talk pod, saying how I think Jay Higgins could possibly fill that void. It's actually up to, I think, 1.6 million views on TikTok. So I'm hoping just after that, Higgins is able to have a major part, but we'll see. I mean, there are very little holes on this team. Just in general, we talked about the offense. We need to talk about DeAndre Hopkins coming to Baltimore. That's a huge addition as well. Real quick before we break down the schedule, for the first time, actually, since Justin Tucker was a rookie, kicker is now just a question mark. And I know Tyler Loop has looked fine as he's trying to succeed Tucker, but we really won't be able to tell until we get into those NFL games and the high pressure situations and the biggest moments in tougher environments. So what have you seen so far from Loop? You think he could be a good person to succeed Tucker?
I think the jury is still out on Loop. I think Loop has the talent without a doubt. And what they like, and we talked to Randy Brown the other day, their kicking coordinator. They wanted a strong leg, which Tyler Loop has. They wanted a guy that had a good, consistent, and repeatable process, which Tyler Loop has. A confident kicker, which Tyler Loop is. And so they feel like he's a guy that even if he does have some struggles, he's a guy that will be able to kind of find his way out of it. Now, for me, this team is too good to where kicking is the thing that holds them back. And you can make the argument last year that Justin Tucker was one of the weak links on this Ravens team. He didn't have a good year kicking the football last year. So a lot, and I get it. When people look at Tyler Loop and they compare him to Justin Tucker, they're comparing Tyler Loop not to last year's Justin Tucker, but to the legacy of Justin Tucker, the career of Justin Tucker. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it because he is a rookie and you can't gauge what he's going to do this year compared to Tucker's entire body of work. You can't, that's just not very fair. And just logically, I don't think it makes sense. So I do think Loop is going to need some time, which is why I am kind of taken back a little bit about how they've gone about him in camp. He didn't even kick today. Like, he doesn't kick every day. And for a guy that hasn't made there's been 2 preseason games. He's missed a kick in both of them. Granted, he's bounced back in each, but I think I would like to see my kicker become a little more consistent before I'm giving him days off. I would have him kicking every opportunity possible in practice, even in these preseason games. I'm setting up something situationally to where maybe in regular season I go for this, but tonight, no, I want to see Tyler Loop out there take this kick.
Right.
So, I think it'll take some time with him. Fans may have to be patient in some moments, but I think overall he'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you brought up because if you do compare Loop to what Tucker was last year, Tucker was 28th in field goal percentage. So if you look at it that way, If Tyler Loop is a below average kicker, the Ravens could still have similar success, maybe even more, because this roster just looks better as a whole. And I think he could do better than Tucker did last year. I mean, he lost them a few games, missed a
Mm-hmm.
kick in some one score games. You look at the Philly game and the Pittsburgh game, as the Ravens would have won if Tucker made his kicks. So yeah, they were 2-5 when Justin Tucker missed a kick last year. All five of their regular season losses came when he did miss. So if Loop is even a little bit more consistent, we could see this team even reach that next tier in the regular season. We do this for every team. Let's take a quick look at the schedule here real quick. Always a challenging one when you are a division winner year after year and you play in a brutal AFC North. It's the ninth hardest in the NFL according to opponent win percentage. They also face 5 of the other 7 teams that joined them last year in the divisional round just in the first 6 weeks. The Browns the only outlier there. So overall, what stands out to you from this schedule and maybe my projection is I have the Flock going 11-6 in 2025.
I mean, it's hard to argue with a lot of that, to be honest with you. I mean, it's the typical Ravens way, right? I could see them lose. Look, I tend to believe that they will beat Buffalo. I do think that they'll beat Buffalo. But I thought they'd beat Kansas City and what they lost by a toe. So yeah, I don't know. That's definitely one of those toss-up games. I don't think that they, and you've got them losing to both Kansas City and Buffalo, which is very possible. I think they split. I think they end up splitting one of those. I think they beat Buffalo and probably lose in Kansas City by a hair
Yeah.
again. Um, I agree with them beating Detroit. I think they do get Detroit. They just get up for those types of teams. It's just tough to sneak up on the Ravens when they know you're coming. If you're the Colts, if you're the Raiders coming in week 2 or something like that Browns game, even that one I think they'll be jazzed up for because that's what the
Yep.
anniversary game and stuff. Joe Flacco will be back, so I don't think they'll have their guard down in that game. But yeah, the Rams one is a toss up. I could see them losing that one, but it's a lot going on with Stafford right now, so a lot of their season depends on how his back is feeling. It sounds like. Um,
Mm.
Everything else, I mean, you got them getting hot at the end of the year. I do think that Packers Steelers combo is a little weird. Um, two you're going to have bad weather here in Baltimore, and definitely going out to Green Bay that late in the year is not going to be great. But the Ravens are built to play in Lambeau in December, so that shouldn't be a problem. I actually don't see any issues with this. You got them splitting with Cincinnati, splitting with Pittsburgh. I think I'm okay. Now you got them. Do you have them winning in Pittsburgh or losing? Which one is that?
Oh, I think it is. Yeah, they're both versus. I think I have them losing at Pittsburgh and then winning
Okay.
at home. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's very plausible. Pittsburgh, I think, will be slightly better than they were last year, but I don't think they get a playoff win. And the
No.
Bengals, I mean, they barely beat them twice last year. I'm sure that offense will get hot enough in one of these games to split them. So 11-6, 11-6 or 12-5 is in the ballpark of where I have the Ravens record being in general
Mm.
because that's what it typically is. I expect them to win the division, and I think it would be a disappointment if they don't at least make the conference championship. But I think the overall sentiment is they are a team that should represent the AFC this year.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly have the most talent, but talent on paper clearly hasn't been the recipe. I mean, I honestly think that the floor for this team is like 10-7 if the pieces stay healthy. Obviously, I
Uh-huh.
I I always do projections thinking that everyone is going to stay healthy, but I truly think that this is one of like the worst case scenarios for Baltimore. I mean, you gotta hope that you can win both against Cleveland, but I feel like I've seen this rodeo before where
Yep.
Baltimore is going to lay an egg. It's just one of the consistency issues for this team. They just cannot beat the bad teams the should. The Colts of the world, the Raiders of the world, the Browns of the world. So yeah, I mean that Cleveland game in week 2 could be tough. Joe Flacco coming back to Baltimore, maybe some revenge. I know things did not really end well for Flacco with Baltimore. He kind of holds a little bit of a grudge against them. Yeah, I mean you got to hope that they can split though with the Buffaloes or Kansas Cities. Those are 2 tough road games. I do think I have them losing to the Rams, thinking that Stafford will be there with their issues, and given the fact that Lamar Jackson dominates against the NFC. I do think they should be able to take care of business there. I do have them losing, but that could also be a game that you could flip. And then to me, though, it is going to be tough. The reason why I have them losing that Cleveland game, not only is it a divisional game on the road, it is a third consecutive road game. And so when you're going on the road to Miami, on the road to Minnesota, then on the road to Cleveland, all across the country. So yeah, I mean, I think 11-6. I mean, I think you can even go as high as 13-4, flip some games the other direction. But yeah, it's somewhere between 10-7, 13-4 sounds right. The question is though, going again, it's going to be the postseason. Cordell Woodland, we got to talk real quick. Every year it's the same result. It happens in different ways. Some year it happens with pick sixes in Buffalo. Some year it happens with fumbles on the goal line. Some year it happens with drops on the goal line. It ends in different ways, but the result remains the same. Is this team going to overcome their challenges, or will the conversation be the same next August?
I mean, it's so tough to tell with this team. If I lean on the past, the answer is no. What have we seen to tell us that this year will be different? I mean, and it's an unfair. I mean, I can't even say it's unfair. It's the product that they have put out. It's the resume that they have built. This version of the Ravens haven't been able to show their dominance in the postseason, so people are going to doubt them until they do. And you combine that with the Chiefs dominating the AFC every year, the Bills being there as well, and the Ravens everybody's talking about Lamar not being able to get past Mahomes. It just seems like they can't get past the Bills in the playoffs either. He's 0-2 against them. So, I mean, it's going to be very important, and I know they lost the AFC Championship game at home, but I do think it's going to be important for them to at least split those two games between Buffalo and Kansas City, because I mean, we're talking about fighting for the 1 seed between those three teams. At least that's the way we're looking at it today. You wanna face Josh Allen in Baltimore. You don't want to have to go back out to Buffalo. You want Mahomes to come back to Baltimore. Sure, he beat you last time, but do it again. Do it again. You want to put the odds in your favor as best as you can. I mean, this is the best team they've had in this stint of the Lamar reign. I think that this is the year, but then again, I've picked the Ravens to win it the last 2 years, and I was wrong. So, I mean, at some point, Lamar is going to break through. At some point, he and his team will break through.
I can't see a way that he doesn't get one. He's just the guy's just too humble. He's gonna get one. This year did not get one.
I mean, but Marino didn't get one, and it's the way it goes. My favorite players and probably my favorite athlete in general is Allen Iverson. First ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest scorers of all time. No rings. It's sometimes it goes that way. And I think we look at these guys individually and we look at their greatness and we just, like we just said, oh, he's too great to not get one. But a lot of things happen that are out of his control. And even the things that have been in his control, he hasn't done perfectly in the postseason. Some things have fallen on him. He had the two turnovers last year. But it's things that happen out of his control. So football is the ultimate team sport. You need everybody to do their job. And that's what it's going to boil down to for the Ravens, for them to be the best team in the league. It's not about them having the best player. They've got to be the best team in the postseason.
Right. And I think overall it's kind of been a collective team failure. You mentioned not forcing turnovers on the defense. It's not just Lamar. It's the Zay Flowers of the world. It's the Mark Andrews of the world as pass catchers and players around him that have made mistakes. You talk about maybe some of the play calling, going away from the run when you shouldn't, running trick plays to Ronnie Stanley when you're inside the 10-yard line. So it's some of the decisions. Cordell, I'm not going to, right here before we wrap up, I'm not going to sit here and say that John Harbaugh is on the hot seat. However, if the same result once again occurs where it's not just Lamar, it's the others around him, it's defense that isn't stepping up, if we once again kind of see this trickle-down effect, the domino effect for this team, where everything just falls apart in the biggest moment, At what point do you just have to say this isn't working? Because you're not going to let go of Lamar. You're committed long term to Lamar. It's soon going to be more with that extension. At what point does EDC pull the trigger and say, we got to go in a different direction, as crazy as that might sound?
I mean, this is a very important year for John Harbaugh in my mind. You know, they can't lose in the second round this year. Buffalo, Kansas City, doesn't matter. You can't lose in the second round this year. If they get, I mean, I think they have to make the Super Bowl. That's my opinion. I think the expectations are that they have to represent the AFC this year. Um, Anything short of making it to the Super Bowl, questions will definitely be asked about the future of John Harbaugh. Anything short of making it to the AFC Championship games, I think you're at that point, you're starting to make assumptions about the future of John Harbaugh. How can you explain not making it to the AFC
Right.
Championship game with this team, barring injury? And even if it is injury and it all falls apart, it's like you only get but so many bites of the apple. And I don't think there's anybody here. I like John. I do. I don't think there's anybody that can say John has gotten an unfair shake during his time here, during the Lamar time. He's probably gotten more bites than people out there would think that he should have gotten. You know, it's people that call into the station that feel like John Harbaugh should have been fired. So I think this is the year. This is a very important year, and I think that's why you've seen John Harbaugh try to wave the flames of all the expectations put on this team. He doesn't want to hear anything about Super Bowl or bust, or, you know, hear about how great of a roster they have and the expectations surrounding this team. I think realistically, he knows. I think John knows how important of a year this is for him. And so we'll see how it goes. But anything short of reaching the AFC Championship game, I think you're in the danger zone when you talk about John Harbaugh.
Look, it's first world problems. The Ravens are one of the NFL's best franchises. They're again in a position, barring injury, to go all the way. It's going to be a fun season from the flock. Everyone, links to all of Cordell's work is in the descriptions. You can check out all of his content throughout the Ravens season. Cordell Woodland, thank you so much for joining me here on 32 on 32 on Chase's Sports News today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you here. Would love to reconnect again, on my individual Ravens series. The Ravens are my favorite team, so a unique perspective here when previewing every single NFL team season. So I'm excited for what the season will hold. We're going to wrap it up here alongside Cordell Woodland. I am your host, Chase Coburn. Stay tuned for more season previews right here on 32 on 32.